The stitches that may be included in this video include the single crochet, double crochet, the increase, invisible decrease, slip stitch, chain stitch, and the magic circle. For this video, we'll be using pink, white, black, and yellow yarn, a 4.5mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a darning needle, stitch markers, fabric glue, yellow and black felt to make the eyes and nose, or you can also just crochet your own eyes and nose. To make my Melodies flower, we're going to start with a magic circle. And inside our magic circle, we're going to do 6 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we're going to tighten up that magic circle. And we're ready to start on the next row. For our next row, we're going to do an increase in each of the stitches. So we're going to start with our first single crochet. And we're going to get our stitch marker. And then going back into that same crochet to make our increase. And then we're going to keep doing these increases in each of the stitches till we get to the end where we should have 12 single crochets. And here we're on our last increase. We should have a total of 12 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do a single crochet and an increase 6 times. So there's a single crochet, and we're going to put in our stitch marker, and then we're going to do an increase. And then a single crochet and an increase. And we're going to keep doing our single crochet and an increase till we go all the way around. And here we're on our final single crochet and an increase. And here we should have 18 single crochets going all the way around. For our next row, we're going to do a single crochet, an increase, and a single crochet. So we're going to start with a single crochet. Then we're going to put in our stitch marker. Then here we're going to do an increase. And a single crochet. And then we're going to start again with a single crochet, an increase, and a single crochet. So then another single crochet, an increase, and a single crochet. We're going to continue to do this until we get to the end of our row. And here we are on our final single crochet, an increase, and a single crochet. We should have a total of 24 single crochets going all the way around. For our next row, we're going to do 3 single crochets and an increase. So there's 1. Let's get our stitch marker. 2, 3 single crochets and an increase. Again, there's 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and an increase. And we're going to continue to do this until we get to the end of the row. And here we're on our last 3 single crochets and an increase. So there's 1, 2, 3 single crochets and an increase. And here we should have a total of 30 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do 30 single crochets all the way around. So there's 1. Going to get our stitch marker. And we're just going to continue doing these single crochets until we get all the way around. And here we're on number 29 and finishing with number 30. So here we have our 30 single crochets, and as you can tell, we're going to kind of make like 3/4 of a ball, and it's going to turn into a petal. So for our next rows, we're going to do decreases. So here we're going to start with 3 single crochets and a decrease. So there's 1, 2, 3, and a decrease. Again, 1, 2, 3, and a decrease. We're going to continue to do this until we get to the end of the row. And here we're on our final 3 single crochets and a decrease. It's 2, and here's 3, and then our final decrease. And here we should have a total of 24 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do a single crochet and a decrease and a single crochet. So there's our single crochet, and here's a decrease and a single crochet. So then we're starting with that single crochet to a decrease and a single crochet. Starting with the single crochet, a decrease, and a single crochet. We're going to continue this till we get to the end of the row. And here's our final single crochet, a decrease, and a single crochet. And here we should have a total of 18 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to start with a single crochet and then to a decrease. So there's our single crochet, and then a decrease. So there's a single crochet and a decrease. And we're going to keep doing that until we get to the end of the row. And here we're on our final single crochet and a decrease. We should have a total of 12 single crochets, and now we're ready to finish off our petal here. So we're going to cut our yarn, pull it through, and then we're going to stuff this just a little bit. I'm going to remove this crochet marker. So we have a little bit of stuffing. We're not going to fill it up where it goes all the way like into a ball, but we're just going to fill it up so it just looks like a puffy flower or a puffy petal. So like this is good. So it's just kind of puffy here, and then we're going to sew the top together. So here we have our darning needle, and we're going to weave it through the outer loops of our crochet stitches. So this, we're going up and then through the bottom of all of these loops. And then we're going to continue that. If you don't want to do it this way, you can also go, you know, up, then down each one of these outer loops. But it just seems to go faster if you just weave it all the way through. And then once we get back to the starting corner here, we're going to pull it so that it closes up. And once we have it closed like this, we could leave this yarn here, or we could hide it inside. So if we hide it inside, we can just do a stitch and then go back inside and then just go out through one end and then just cut it here. But since we'll be using this yarn to gather all of our petals together, we're going to leave one of them long, but the rest of them we're going to cut them off. So for this one, I'm just going to leave the yarn long so that we can sew together all of our petals. But the other ones you can just cut off the yarn. So we'll have this one as our first petal, and then we need to make another 3, so we have a total of 4 of these. So now we have all 4 of our petals, and we're ready to sew them together. These, as you can see, we cut off the yarn tails. This one we have our yarn tail, so we're going to gather up our petals using this yarn tail. So we're just going to go through the petal, the bottom here, through one side and the other. And then we're going to slip it right on. And then we're going to take the other one, go through that stitch, just basically the first stitches on top. And there's our 3rd petal. And then our 4th petal here. We'll just go right across the bottom here. Okay, so we have the 4 petals together. Then we're going back into this first one. And then here I'm going to go out between these 2 rows. It's the rows where there were 30 single crochets. So I'm going to go out on the side here. And then I'm going to go through these other petals between the 2 rows. This will secure the petals a little bit better. So just straight across through the 2 rows. And here, just straight across the 2 rows. Then we have one more up here. We're going straight across the 2 rows. Then we'll just tighten them up together. And then we'll just bring this back through. So I'm just going to go through the next row, this row here, and then go into the bottom. Then I'll just pull it all together again, make sure that it's nice and tight. And then I could just tuck this in. Okay, so now we have part of the flower done, and then we just need to make the middle. Now we're going to make the middle of the flower. We're going to start with a magic circle, and this is going to be like the top of a ball. So once we have our magic circle, we're going to put 6 single crochets inside. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we're going to pull our tail and form it into that circle. For our next row, we're going to do an increase in each of the stitches. So we're going to start with our first single crochet. And we're going to get our stitch marker. And then we're going back into the same stitch for our second crochet for our increase, and we're just going to put an increase in every single stitch until we get to the end. And here we're on our final increase, and we should have 12 single crochets, and I'm going to pull this together again. Okay, and so stitches are more together. For our next row, we're going to do a single crochet and an increase. So we're going to start with a single crochet, put in our stitch marker, and then an increase. Then a single crochet and an increase. Single crochet and an increase, and we're going to do this until we get to the end. And here we're on our final single crochet and an increase. And here we should have a total of 18 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do 18 single crochets all the way around. We're going to start with our first single crochet, put our stitch marker on there, and then we're going to continue making single crochets. And here we're on our 18th single crochet. We're finished with this row, and we're going to move on to the next. Next, we're going to do a single crochet and a decrease. So we're going to have our single crochet with our lovely stitch marker, and then a decrease. And here we're already going down in our circle. So that's a single crochet and a decrease. A single crochet and a decrease. We're going to do this all the way around. And here we're on our last single crochet and a decrease. And we should have a total of 12 single crochets. And now we're just going to cut our yarn. And then we're going to pull it through. And then we're going to make our fake stitch. Here we have our darning needle. We're going to skip a stitch and go into the next stitch and through the inside loop of that beginning stitch. And we're going to make our stitch the same size as the others, and then just weave it through a few of the stitches in the back. Then we're just going to cut this tail off. And we're just going to use this as the inside of our flower. So here we have our flower, and this is our middle, and we can either glue it just right in here, or we could sew it onto the flower. If you want to sew the middle in, you can from the back. You can just do a few stitches. So you can just take this stitch here and go through the middle. And then kind of make a knot. So you're just going to cross and go in between here. And here we can actually cut this yarn. Just leave enough of a tail so that we can tie a knot at the end. And then just keep going through the middle yellow part and then through the middle of the petal. So here through one of the stitches in the flower middle, and then through the middle of the petal. Here we're on our last one. Through the middle and then through the petal. And then here we're just going to go back into the middle of that petal here. And then we have the middle of the flower sewn in, and we can just tie these two ends together. And here we are, we're finished with My Melody's flower. Here we have My Melody's flower, and you can either sew it or glue it onto her hoodie. So here we're gonna sew it, but I think it's a lot easier to just glue it on. But if we sew it, we're just going to go into the flower. We can just tie a knot here, maybe leave a longer tail so that we can tie a knot at the end. And I'm going to put half on her head and half on her ear to the side. And then we're going to go back into the hoodie. And go to the next petal. And then I'm going to go into the petal. And then I'm going to go into the hoodie. So basically in that same stitch. And then I'm going to go into the ear where the petal is. So I think right around here. You can't see it. So here I'm going from the hood and into the petal, into the ear. So we're going from the hood under the petal to the ear. And then I'm going to go into the petal right above the stitch where we have the yarn. Then I'm going to turn the My Melody this way. And then I'm going to go back into the ear. I'm going to go into that same stitch. And then I'm going to go right across. Come out from the ear and then go into the petal. Right above the stitch where the yarn is coming from. Let's turn this one more time to get a better view. And so then I'm going to go back into that same stitch and I'm going to go into the hoodie. So I'm going to put this needle through and get to this stitch where we started from. So I'm almost there. I'm gonna go back into that same stitch we just came out of and then go into this stitch here where we started. Then I'm going to tie these together and that should secure the flower. So here we tie the knot, make sure it's nice and tight, and then cut the end. And then we'll just weave in these ends. And now we're done attaching the flower to My Melody. Here we have our eyes and nose. These are crocheted and these are made of felt. I like the ones that are made of felt because they're easier to work with and they're flat, but the crocheted ones look good too because they're crocheted and everything else is crocheted, but I'm going to go with the felt ones because they're just a lot easier to use, and I think in the end look better. So we'll go with these. For My Melody's face, I already marked the spots for where I want the eyes to go. So from the top of the hood here, we have 3 of these open spaces. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So that's where I put the marker. And then from the side of the hood, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So same with this side, we have 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to take the eyes and place the center of the eyes to the center of this stick. So I think that looks good. And then this one here. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 from the middle here. Let's see if I have the same. 1, 2, 3. I think it needs to be moved just slightly. So I think this is good here. So in between the eyes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 holes. So we're going to put our nose centered at the 6.5 point. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this is the half point here. So we'll put the middle of our nose right here. So that's how our face should be, and we're going to glue these on. So here we have the glue. I'll start with this eye here. So I have the glue on this eye, and I'm going to place it back in that spot. So let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think My Melody's eye goes in a slight tilt inside, where the top goes towards the inside. So I'm just going to tilt it a little bit towards the inside. And then we're going to put glue on the other eye. From this eye, we'll count the stitches. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there are 13 open spaces. So I'll put this one here, so that we have that 13 open spaces. I'm going to tilt the eye a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to do the nose. So then here I'm going to place the nose. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 open spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 open spaces. So I think that's the right spot. If you're counting from the bottom, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 open spaces. And then for the nose, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 open spaces. The one thing that My Melody has that Hello Kitty doesn't is a mouth. So I'm going to add her little smile. It goes just right under the nose. I think that looks good. And now we're done with My Melody's face. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this tutorial. I hope you got to watch all of the other tutorials, and you'll be able to make this My Melody Amigurumi huggable size. If you found these videos useful, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And hit that notification bell so you know when our next video is out. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.